everybody, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world. This is the Coach's Corner, and of course, I am here with Coach Bono. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Bo. How are you doing today?
Excellent, excellent. So we have a great, we got a great guest today. Tell us about him.
Well, we're going to have a lot. We're back to the international brand of American football. It's my pleasure to introduce Coach Jim Ward. Coach Ward is the head football coach of the Milan Seamen. They compete in the European League of Football. He's a, I guess, retired Texas high school football coach. We know about how great the high school football is down there. I'm sure he'll be able to touch on that. But he's 6 hours ahead of us, so he's already put in a full day. It's my pleasure to have him on the show, Coach Jim Ward.
Hey.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Coach, it's 10 o'clock there right now, right?
Yeah, it's 10 p.m. here.
Good deal. Yeah, I guess the first thing, tell us a little bit about you and your background and kind of how I know you and I have shared this in our couple phone conversations that we've had, but just kind of your high school career coaching in Texas and, a lot of respect for the brand of ball that gets played in that state. And then, how that led to you going over to Europe and how you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, of course, I started coaching in 1980. So immediately after getting out of college, playing college ball, and then went back to Texas, started coaching high school. Coached, high school until about 1998, and then I went with the University of Mary Hardin Baylor, Division III school there in Central Texas for a few years. Of course, I'd been a student assistant at Carson Newman, where I graduated in East Tennessee. But primarily, like you said, most of my experience was high school, and had some good times. Like any other coach, had some bad times. I tell people, I think it was Bum Phillips always said there's two kinds of coaches: those that have been fired and those going to get fired. So, we've all been down that road. But yeah, Texas high school football is just, the organization of it's different than most states. That's what's different about it. Of course, a big state, you got lots of players and all that, and we got good players. Other states have great players too. It's just the way it's organized and the way it's done that's usually different than other states. So,
I remember recruiting down in Texas, and the first time I went down to, I think it was in the Houston area, and the high schools even back then had like a full-time recruiting coordinator. The high school coach doesn't teach class, and he's got a staff. I remember one school in particular, I think it was at Bryant, which was out, I think near College Station, if I'm not mistaken. And they had just finished building a new stadium, and coach's office overlooked the stadium, and he had been on the job a year and was able to bring his entire staff from his previous high school. So they do things a little bit differently. There's a lot more emphasis and a lot more resources, and with those obviously come increased expectations.
Right. Yeah, you're like I said, you're expected to win. It doesn't matter what size school it is. If you don't, you'll be packing, and they're not going to help you pack either.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's definitely different than other places, because a lot of times their normal teacher that is kind of dabbling in coaching, and they don't care if you're good. Now the kids do. The kids want to win, but the coaches,
Yeah. Well, you go into it, knowing about the expectations, and that's just part of it. Of course, I played high school ball in Texas too, so grew up that way. It's not anything new, and experienced some in other states, so I know the difference. Even though, like I said, there's great programs and great players and coaches other places. It's just the way it's done more than anything else.
I'll go back a little bit here and show my age, but when I was at West Point, the U.S. Military Academy, all three service academies, obviously, you know, a lot of times you end up fishing out of the same pond, but all three service academies had a really very large representation from the state of Texas.
Yeah.
You know, Army, Navy, and Air Force. And, you know, as the recruiting coordinator, I kind of, and having seen the football down there, I had a theory about it, and I don't know if it was true, but I really think, number one, you know, Texans are pretty patriotic people. There are a lot of great Americans that come from that state, number one. Number two, I really felt like where the service academies had an edge were for those kids that had the academics to get, you know, to get into one of the service academies. You know, a lot of times if they were looking at Ivy League schools and that sort of thing, those kids want to play Division I football. They want to play at the highest level. And some of them traveling to the Ivy League schools, it's like taking a step down. The facilities weren't as good as even they had in high school. And I just think one of the reasons the service academies always thrived in the state of Texas was because of those reasons. It gave some of those kids that maybe weren't, ready-made right now, step into the program, Division I players, the opportunity to play Division I football. Yeah, that's just my theory.
Yeah, I think you're probably spot on there. That's pretty true.
Now, so how did Europe come about, Coach? How did that?
Well, when I finally decided I'm going to get out of the high school part of it, and actually it's more my wife's doing than mine to begin with. She said, well, we ought to go somewhere and teach, like Costa Rica or something like that. And I said, well, I'll be glad to go somewhere, but I'm not teaching anybody anything. I said, I'll go somewhere. Of course, coaching's teaching, but you know what I mean. So
sure.
But so she kind of found out about what was going on in Europe because I didn't know, and no one I knew about it. I mean, I'd never heard about European football at all. So I got on this, got on a website and put my profile on there, and I wasn't probably a week, 10 days. I got a call, and a team in Finland, of all places. I didn't even know they knew what football was in Finland, but come to find out, they had a lot of it in Finland. I just didn't know, and so my first job was 2011 over here. Went to kind of a small town in northern Finland called Seinäjoki, which was in the the Finnish, what they call the Maple League, which is the Finnish top division of American football. They had teams in Helsinki and other places. So it was it was a different experience, but it was a great experience. We were there 2 years, 2 seasons, and so made a lot of good friends, and then played some pretty good football too. Went over there the first year. The guy who was the offensive coordinator, I was head coach and defense coordinator. He said, I'd like to run the options. I said, hey, I'm all for it. So we put in spread option veer, and just, nobody could get ready for it. So we, scored 55 points a game running the veer. And, because, you got 2 or 3 practices a week with these guys. You're not going to get ready for the option, so
right.
It was tough. But, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Been a lot of fun everywhere we've been.
And then from Finland, where did you go?
We went to Sweden next, and in Finland we went to the finals the first year, semifinals the second year. Sweden went to the finals, which was the first time they'd been in the finals. From there, I went to Prague, and we won 2 Czech championships, Czech League championships. Also played in the Austrian League, we played double schedule, which sometimes we'd play on Saturday and Sunday, which was I knew it.
That'd be hectic.
Yeah. So
that'd be tough to get up for 2 teams.
Yeah, a little bit different players, but a lot of guys still crossed over. So, but the Austrian league at that time, the AFL, was one of the best leagues in Europe. And so it was, it was an experience to get to play some of those high caliber teams. And we were semifinalists there, so we were pretty good too. But they were, a lot of those teams, Vienna and Innsbruck in particular, who are now in the ELF, were two of the best teams at that time in the Europe. So I've been a little bit everywhere since. I've been in Germany, I've been in Switzerland, I've been in Hungary, now Italy, of course. So been around a little bit. This is 14 years. I've almost equaled my my other about half my other stint. So
Well, you must have a very understanding wife that loves to travel, I would imagine.
Well, it's a good deal because she likes, it's good you get to come here and, not everything's, great. I mean, obviously anywhere you go and everything's going to be great, but you're seeing things you wouldn't get to see otherwise unless you had a lot of money or willing to pay for, trips all the time. So, and, get to do something you like to do. In fact, they have a linebacker playing for us this year. He's an American. He's always say, "How you doing, Zach?" He says, "Living a dream, coach. Living a dream." That's kind of what you're doing. Whether you're playing or coaching over here, it's a pretty good deal.
Well, I know we've been trying to get you on the show for 2 weeks. 1 week you were on the Amalfi Coast, and last week we had tickets to the ballet. So I mean,
the Amalfi Coast was great. The ballet,
Nope, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what is recruiting like? I mean,
John alluded to it a little while ago. The ELF, the big part of your team is national team players or nationals. They got to be from that country. And so, you've got to try to get as many of those top-notch guys as you can. And then you're allowed 10 imports. You get 4 Americans and 6 what they call European tags. And Europeans covers a lot of territory. Like we've got 3 guys from Brazil. They're counted as Europeans, not Americans. So it depends on where you're from and also where you started playing football. If you started playing football in France, even though you're Italian, then you count as a European import, not an Italian. So it's kind of weird.
Jim, what if there's a kid from Ohio that played high school football in Ohio but holds like a dual citizenship? Can he
He's
count?
an American.
Oh, shoot.
He has to start playing football in Italy or whatever country to count as that, what we call a homegrown,
Gotcha.
That kind of deal. So that's how it works. And, it's difficult for smaller countries or those with maybe less football, experience to balance out, with some of these, especially the Germans and Austrians. Madrid's got a really good team this year. They've done a good job. They've been able to sign probably every top-notch Spanish player, which is what you have to do. We weren't that lucky this year with the Italians. We've got, I know 3 or 4 Italians that, should be playing for us and are starting for other ELF teams. So, that's been a
Jim, do you guys, what's your feeder system like as far as the Italian players? Do you guys have like a under 19 team flag?
Yeah, they do. And most of these most of them, you know how Europe works, I guess. It's based on a club system, most places. The ELF has tried to take it up to be, you're paying everybody at least something, where, they count as pros, even though the salaries aren't that high. But, the other teams like Dresden, the GFL and others, they're on a club system. So they'll have, like you said, in Dresden, they've got all that feeder system.
Right.
And, here, because they were that way, that we've got, I think there's 3 teams below But feeder's kind of a misnomer because, yeah, they might play for you or they might play for somebody else.
Right.
So, it's one of those things. Not like high school where you're going to get them all.
Right.
Or they may play for another Italian team. So that could be the way they go too.
Sure. And I would imagine, finances factor into that as well. I mean, I think, like any player or any coach, they're going to follow the money. If they get
Sure.
paid, if you have a national player that's good enough to go to Germany and count as one of their six Europeans, because he's to make more money than you lose.
And it's they have a salary cap, or at least they call it that, but that can be finagled any way you want it to, and then these teams that have quite a bit of money, like you said, they're able to do things sometimes that other teams aren't able to do. And so that is a problem, and that's a problem with kind of the parity in ELF right now. There's those top team, like for the Rhein Fire in Dusseldorf, they were an old NFL Europe team. Well, they have the same fan base basically had back then, so they have built-in people, they can 15, 20,000, 25,000 a game, which is a big crowd in Europe, so,
right.
So
they're at least generating something from ticket revenue and concessions,
right. And I think too, what a lot of teams didn't understand when they got into ELF was that because you're not just traveling in, say, France or Switzerland or whatever, you're not just traveling within that country. When you start crossing borders, and if you have to fly or you have to take 2 or 3 buses and stay overnight and feed people, and I mean, you're bleeding money in a hurry.
Sure.
So that's been part of the problem too.
What's the travel been like? How do you, does everybody ride the bus? Does some of the coaches drive? How does that work?
Well, the travel, it can be brutal sometimes. we had a 13-hour bus trip to Barcelona.
Oh.
Hungary was about the same. Sometimes, coaches may ride the bus over and fly back or something, and some teams, will fly more. Like I was told by a coach there in Madrid that they fly to every away game. Well, that means they've got a lot of backing. They got a lot of money.
Yep. Right.
How hard that is to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you charter, it's way over the top. But if you try to be a commercial airline for 70 people, that's tough to do too. So
plus you got equipment and all that other stuff. I mean,
that a lot of people didn't understand how deep your pockets had to be if you're going to do this. And it's caught some of these teams, Leipzig, Prague, some of these teams that folded, Istanbul. It was all about money. It wasn't about players. It's money.
I mean, that's usually what gets them. Even the like semi-pro type leagues that are all around the country, usually what they fold up for is they can't afford to actually get to any of the games. So, it's unfortunate because you want to see these leagues survive. And, basically, unless you have the NFL crest, money's an issue.
Yeah. Well, you got to have TV money. That's
exactly.
That's what saves you. And we got a streaming service, subscription streaming. Well, you're going to make a little bit, but it's not going to be enough to sustain, No,
for sure. And when watching the show here, she actually has a good question. How many languages do you speak? Being as you've bounced all around Europe, I mean,
I speak
English. So
I tell I told players in every country I've been, I said, I know some of you guys don't speak very good English. Don't worry, I don't either. I'm from Texas, so I don't speak very good English. But I tell you the truth, you learn a few phrases or, things to get by. But, I tell you what, some of these languages I couldn't even start. Finnish, Hungarian, man, they're out there. I don't even know, it wasn't to tell you the truth, I haven't learned any language specifically. I hate to say that, but
well, it doesn't matter what language you speak. That whistle bouncing off your helmet is the same in every country.
yeah, that's right. And English is. I mean, it's American football, so English is the language of American football. So,
right.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or at least on the field, they understand.
I was surprised when I went to Germany how many of the players spoke English. I mean, they almost every one of them spoke at least halfway. All the coaches, even though they were all German, except for one of them, they were all German, and the head coach was American, but they all spoke English. I know from my traveling in Italy, there's a fair. It's not as prominent in Italy, but I'm sure there's enough.
That's true. I mean, it depends on how the country approaches it. A lot of countries require, they start learning English when they get into school, and a lot of them learn it from TV, of course, or
right.
music, whatever it is. They all listen to American music, watch American TV. They learn it that way. And you're right. Italy's a little less than some others, but in general, they generally know how to speak English.
Now, what about the makeup of your staff, your coaching staff?
We're a little bit like it was, with a club system, and it's something that's got to get better if you're going to do well, because it's me and my offensive coordinator, the only full-time guys. So, we've got all the other coaches are, like you said, they hold jobs and they have to come in, in the evening for practice or whatever. We meet by Zoom or, it's that kind of thing. So that's difficult. Now, last year when I was in Switzerland, we had 5 American coaches, which was, beneficial because you're all there and you're able to do something. Of course, that was unusual. And I think Madrid's that way this year. You probably know Mac McWhorter,
right,
and Rip Shearer and those guys are there, and they've got a pretty good staff where they're all the time. So it just depends on where you are. If you got money, you can do it. If you don't have a lot of money, then
right. That's that seems to be the common denominator there.
Every time.
Yeah.
So you got a tough schedule coming up, and so I guess the first part of that, how many teams make it into the playoffs?
They got the 2 teams that get a bye, and then they have I think it was the 4 other teams that play to get into the semi, to play the top 2 teams.
Okay.
So it'll kind of work like that. I think right now it's if it ended today, it'd be Vienna and Ryan fires the top 2, and then I think Tyrol, Madrid. I'm trying to remember who else. Paris, maybe. I can't remember who else would be in that top tier, but
I got you. So that's that's total. That's not a certain amount from any given division.
Yeah, they it's. I'm trying to remember how they. There's a tiebreaker system and all kinds of things. I'd have to go into that. But just like anything else, you got to win to get in. So it's one of those deals. But, yeah, we got we have a tough schedule. We're down 3 imports right now, which is tough on us, especially. You get 10 and we got 7, so it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's huge when you're you're not where you need to be talent wise, especially.
Is that because of injuries, Jim?
Yeah, a couple of them. I mean, we had one was not replaced and left early in the year. We were trying to find. We've been beating the bushes for offensive linemen all summer, and we just can't get them. I mean, if we find somebody in the league grabs him before we do, and like you said, probably paying him more money, and so that kind of was an issue. And we lost one. It was an import safety from France who had to go home for personal issues. and then our American middle linebacker, who's a great player. We're afraid this last game he'd already partially tore his MCL, I think, 2 weeks ago. So this past week he may have got the ACL too. So we're
brutal.
Yeah,
that's the problem. And like I said, we just went in, a little shorthanded, especially in the offensive line. We had to go to Brazil to get 3 offensive linemen. Good sized guys, big, athletic, but they haven't faced this kind of competition either. So they're on a learning curve in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
You got guys in these other teams playing, edge rusher and all that can come off the football and eat your lunch, so.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you're not used to the competition. You get a highly skilled edge rusher, you're going to end up on the ground a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's I mean, the challenges are abound. How do you navigate that? You've got to have kind of, I mean, I'm just, I remember looking at, saw one of the text messages where you guys, I guess, were getting ready to practice on a grass field, and it was kind of overgrown with flowers and that sort of thing. I mean, you should.
Yeah, that's we always had I don't know if you may know Don Clemens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Don, when we were in Switzerland, we were together in Switzerland last year. We started talking about something like that, and he always had to say, he says, "Well, it's Europe," and that's exactly the case, because that's what you run into. And you would hope when you get to the ELF being a top league that you don't run into things like that, but you still do because a field's not available. A lot of teams don't have their own facilities. So then you have to go somewhere else, and then, nobody's cut the grass or cut the weeds in, a couple of years. So, that was quite an experience.
Yeah, I got a kick out of that. I think, I always noticed that, invariably somebody's running late because they got to work, can't be at this meeting, that meeting. So I know, I mean, that's got to be your mindset has to, obviously you've been over there for, 14 years. You've probably seen everything and, you can imagine. But, I mean, it's hard to fathom that if if you don't, you've got to have you have to have like a forgiving or adaptive mindset in order to be able to try to.
And that's what's hard about American coaches coming to Europe. If they're used to having everybody all the time, on time, and that's not going to be the case. It's more so, especially with some of the teams, but you still have those problems. You still have those issues. They could be coaches or players if they're not full time, so.
Except game day. Everybody manages to get to game day on time.
Yeah, they usually do that. Yeah, that's true.
So what time do you guys practice at night then in the evenings, obviously after?
Yeah, and it's and it's because you have these guys working, and coaches, so you can't practice early. They're not going to be there. You can't get everybody there. So, yeah, most teams, I don't know about the other teams in the ELF, but we have to practice at least 8:30 or later, to make sure we got everybody. Because if we meet before, that means, we're meeting at 7 or, can everybody get there if they get off work at 6 or 6:30 or,
right,
whatever it is. So, we'll have some separate sessions for the imports, but again, if you do that, then you've got, we got imports and we got what we call full-time players who are not guys who work. They're getting paid by the club. So you might have 20, 25 of those guys. But you can only do so much.
Right,
with that kind of number. So that presents a problem sometimes.
So are you practicing at like college fields or high school fields or something like that?
Well, we have the stadium here in Milan. It's called it's the Vigorelli Velodrome. It was an old velodrome that they turned into a football stadium. It's got really nice turf, and we got dressing rooms and a small office area. Now it's not ours. It's run by what they call the Milano Sport, which is the sport association here. So sometimes that conflicts with what you want to do because you're subject to the girls flag football team taking your time slot. So it's kind of one of those deals, but you have to deal with it.
Yeah, whoever rents the field first, right?
Yeah, generally. Yeah.
That's got to be a big velodrome to get a football field in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's really a pretty good setup. I mean, that's you can go online and look at it. It's it's a pretty nice setup. There's of course there's always things that could be better, in any kind of old stadium, but not a bad setup at all. At least you don't have to worry about getting rained out at practice. I mean, last year in Switzerland we got rain the first 2 weeks we were there, and we practiced on a asphalt tennis court for 2 weeks. So that would say that. Well, it's Europe, so that's right.
That's backyard football right there.
Yeah. You have to adapt.
Are these mostly when you guys are playing? Are you guys playing on grass fields or turf fields, or what's that look like?
It's. I think it's kind of pretty even. We've played on both. I would say probably majority of them are turf. But there's some grass fields too. I mean, Munich's got a nice grass field. The problem you run into in Europe too is if it's a nice grass field, it's probably a soccer stadium, and those soccer players get really upset if you tear up the turf. So
they play on not a different grass, but I know like the NFL that has they've struggled when they've had to play on soccer fields because just how they grow the grass and they want to be able to slide on it. Yeah, they've got to be able to slide on numbers. Yeah,
you see a lot of It's not like you said. It's not made for football. It can be a problem.
Jim, in 14 years, I'm sure have you run into your fair amount of like totally dimensional fields, like you play on any 90-yard stadiums or
you run into some of that.
Yeah.
Well, we run into one where we got we go 10, 20, 30, 40, and then between the two 40s is about 8 yards. So you run into some of that for sure.
Yeah, I remember because I played for a team in the Italian league, Verona. I think we went up to Bolzano, and it was a 90-yard field, with I think 8-yard end zones. So they had to fit a football field in that available space, and it was just
right.
So
you've been over enough
right.
to know how you like you say, it's just adapt. You got to adapt, and and I say some guys just they come over here to coach, especially, and some players obviously, it's you got to adapt because it's not going to be like it is in the States. Most places,
Nope.
It's not going to have. They're going to have the setup. You're not going to have everything that you're used to.
Yeah. Not going to be able to get your ankles taped every day for practice.
Right. Yeah.
Unless you do it yourself.
Yeah. And fortunately we have some physiotherapists, trainers who will tape at practice, but like you said, a lot of teams, you may not have that. We're all old enough to tape their own ankles at one time or another or something, or tape something. So these guys may not know how to do it, but
I've taped my own ankle many times.
Yeah.
You're just like, well, we don't have staff here today, but this has to happen.
Yeah.
That being said, I think everybody should play arena just for 1 year just so that they get used to having to adapt to something different, because man, is that game different.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
That way, when you go over to something that, the rules are just a little different, but you're on a full size field, or even CFL style, you have guys that are running before the snap. I think having some of those changes would be good for players in general.
Right. ELF is NFL rules. So, it's, of course, guys coming out of college, they're having to adapt from NCAA rules to some extent, but, everybody's adopting the kickoff, that I don't want to call it a bastardization of the kickoff, but that's what they've done.
But but they've been doing that in the ELF for a couple of years now.
They started out doing that, so it's nothing new.
But they used that from the XFL. They took that from the XFL.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's originally where it came from.
So this year, are you actually using the NFL rule on that play, or are you using the old
XFL? Yeah, the kickoff return is the old XFL. Everything else is NFL rules pretty much, but they started doing that from the get-go.
So how's that working since you're halfway through the season already? Are you liking that adaptation?
I'm kind of old school. I don't care for it, but the deal is you kick the football, and if it goes in the end zone, it comes out to a certain yard line. If it bounces, or the guy does whatever, it comes out to a certain yard line, or he can field it and return it. There's all kinds of scenarios.
I just mean that you finally have returns again, which I do kind of like, right? Because the NFL,
there's some. I mean, it's probably a little easier to get a seam, maybe. I don't know. Of course, early on they took out the wedge return, and all that. So,
well, one of the things, the difference between the XFL kickoff they're using now is there's really not a penalty for kicking a touchback. So your guys can, if you have somebody that can kick it out to the end zone, it's still coming, I think, is it going to the 25 on a touchback?
Yeah. And you're having to kick it from your opposite 30-yard line, so you got to have a guy who's got a foot on him,
right,
to get it in the end zone. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's be the number one thing we watch in preseason, at least early this year, which is coming up in 2 weeks.
We're actually going to get to see the first version of it tomorrow.
Yeah,
the Hall of Fame game kicks off, so we're going to get to see the first. It's technically football. It's not going to be good football, but we're gonna get to see some of these new rules.
Who's playing in the Hall of Fame game this year?
It's the Texans and the Bears. So it should be interesting. But I'm really looking forward to that rule change right there. Is the new kickoff rule, and more than anything, how they're going to penalize it, because there really hasn't been any coverage on what happens when you have a penalty on that. You're not going to make them re-kick probably. So how do those things?
I know. If it's if the penalty is carried over to the kickoff, which they're trying not to do, they're trying to make that either come on the try or whatever, redo the try.
Yeah.
But they'll move. The kicker will move back to the 20, but the coverage teams are still on the 45 and the 40,
and that's what I mean. It doesn't really change any. It's a pointless.
Or the 40 and the 35, which is 5 yards. They're further. The coverage team's further back than it is in the XFL rule. So it'll be interesting to see how that all times up. So where are you guys at right? How many? You guys are on the home stretch? How many games left in the regular season now, Jim?
We've got 3 left now. We started out with a little bit of the juggernaut with Innsbruck and Munich, and I had Stuttgart. Those 3 in the first 5 games. Now we got those 3 again in the last 5 games. So it depends on, of course, the division you're in, and then you play one team twice that's out of your division. So every team does that. it kind of depends on who you draw, but we have Stuttgart and Tyrol, Innsbruck, and then Munich are all in our division. So
gotcha. Yep, Stuttgart.
And then this week you got an 8-0 team. So I mean that's going to be a battle.
Yeah.
Did you guys go under? Did you have a quarterback change recently? What was?
Yeah, we had brought, of course, an American quarterback, and not a change because he's a bad quarterback necessarily. He's not. He's a good quarterback, good player, good guy. They just trying to jumpstart something. We've struggled, like I say, the offensive line has just been an issue all year. It doesn't matter what kind of quarterback you are. If you don't have an offensive line, you're going to struggle.
Yep.
But this guy we had signed as an emergency quarterback anyway, in case the starter got hurt. And, the management just wanted to take a look at him and see what he could, bring. And so now we've got the quarterback we previously had is actually signed as the emergency quarterback for this guy. So we kind of he's not on IR, but he's in the waiting period in case we have this guy go down. So, and this quarterback played pretty well against Munich at times, but he also threw 4 interceptions. So,
Right.
That kind of thing can get you.
Who are some of your best Italian players? I know they had a young wide receiver last year that I think was rookie of the year.
And he's a good player. He's got a little bit of size and speed. For a wide out. He's still young. He's got a lot to learn. He had a good year last year, and I think his strong suit is getting the fade ball or that kind of thing. He's still got to learn to get off press coverage and things like that. Because otherwise you're going to have to move him around.
Right.
We've got some good, I think some pretty good Italian defensive players, particularly a couple of guys in the D line, linebacker or two, are pretty good. We're undersized in the defensive line compared to these offensive lines we're facing, which kind of hurts us. Now that's where one of our Brazilians came in. We recruited a 320-pound nose tackle. He's played real well. He's been a real good player this year. But we're undersized in other spots. When you're on the defensive ends or your defensive tackles are not, they're 250, 260 maybe, if that big, and you got those 300-pounders over there. So a little undersized.
Are you running like a 3-4 then, so that you can spread them out a little bit more? Or?
We've actually run 3-3-5 primarily. Okay. We'll run some 4 down, change it up and things like that. Even if I can get them in long yards, we'll go 3 high, and I'll play it with a 3 down, 3 high look. But just trying to make things as easy as we can on our guys. When you're undersized, you maybe you can run a little bit. The 3-3-5 kind of gives you some advantage. But again, if a team got some big backs and big linemen, they line up there and run right at you, you've got to be able to hold up too. So.
Right.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're doing a lot of stunts where you're crossing and trying to fill gaps, hoping they trip over you mostly.
So what's the typical preparation week look like, Jim? Do you guys have 4 days of practice, 3 days of practice? How does that look?
It's usually 3 because we play Saturday or Sunday. Mondays, we consider that the off day, so we'll have Zoom meetings or things like that. Of course we got huddles, so we'll use that to put corrections and things on game film and that kind of thing. And then Tuesday is our first practice of the following week. Wednesday, sometimes on Wednesday we'll have what I was saying a minute ago. We'll have the imports in and do that kind of thing with those guys. Usually a short period of time, maybe an hour and a half, but with the imports. And then Thursday's a regular practice. Friday's a walkthrough. and then Saturday or Sunday game. So kind of works that way.
So I imagine you're limited in terms of, you're limited a lot of ways, just overall knowledge, but then, practice time, prep, meeting, and all that stuff. So I imagine, you probably have to keep things fairly basic, don't you? I mean, you can't
Well, Europeans, and I know you've been over here, but most places I've been, they're really no more than people give them credit for.
Right.
I mean, sometimes, of course, you don't practice often. You've got to keep things,
right.
Of course, we always said keep it simple, stupid. So, right. But I mean, they got some football knowledge. Of course, you run into guys that are not there yet too. They don't have that football IQ, but in general, the Europeans I've run into are pretty. They've been playing football a long time. They just don't play, junior high, high school, college. They play club, work up through the system that way if they play. So, but that's kind of the way our week goes, and we're shorthanded in, places to meet, and, that kind of thing, and getting guys there for the meetings, like I said, that are working, because you got to meet. You don't want to meet after practice. That'd be 11 p.m. midnight.
Right.
So having to do that or Zoom or something. So it affects you for sure.
Yeah.
Is it? I would imagine it's kind of hard to get game tape to review. Also,
no, the league requires everybody to be on huddle, and they're required to get their game tape on huddle by 10 a.m. on Monday.
Oh, cool.
Following that weekend. And generally they do. There'll be some situations you got a glitch, you got a problem. But in general, it works pretty well. So, I mean, you're going to have at least 3 or 4 games on somebody.
Nice.
Going in. It's a lot. That's not been an issue really. A couple of times with tape that wasn't very good. Somebody shooting the end zone and it looks like it was shot from the Goodyear blimp. But little things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good. That's good.
I've noticed that in some of the stuff that I've watched.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've actually got some good guys that video our practices. He does a good job. Gets it on. They get it on the next morning. So, at least you have that. And I think most teams probably got that too. That's not an issue. With us, me and the offensive coordinator, I mean, we're the only guys breaking down film. So, that's time intensive. So
sure,
it takes a lot of hours to go through all that, and especially if you're having to input data,
right.
So you can get that. I mean, it takes forever. So that can be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing a lot. You're wearing a lot of hats over there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean you're coaching the team, but you're coaching your coaches, and I think the operative words are it's a challenge everywhere you look. I mean it's crazy.
Yeah, and it's the better the situation. Of course you can delegate that work. If you got full-time coaches, you're way ahead, as far as delegating that kind of thing, or, and so that's an advantage some of the more well-heeled teams are going to have on you. They're going to have that advantage besides being, talent-wise. But
right.
So that, like you said, it's a challenge.
Makes those victories nice though when you take one of the big guys down.
Yeah, it's always nice to do that. We were able to do it last year in Switzerland. We beat Stuttgart when they were undefeated, but their quarterback was out. And the German quarterback they had threw 4 picks. So we'll take credit for it, but every once in a while you can do something like that.
Yeah, in the moment, people are like, "Yeah, but the next year, it's a W on the stat sheet."
Yeah, that's right.
Counts as a W for sure. Yeah, like I said, more teams beat themselves, anyways. That's always, you got to. Part of winning is learning how to not to lose, not to
Yeah,
make,
that's right.
not to beat yourself by, penalties, turnovers, missed tackles, all that stuff.
Or just looking past.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's a thing that like the Surge could run into coming down the stretch, right? Is they could look past somebody and mess up an undefeated season. Or
yeah, there's always that. App State beats Michigan, that kind of thing. Something can always happen. So.
Yep. Who's your best Italian coach? I don't want to put you on the put anybody on the spot here, but
yeah,
you can say they're all good. But
let me think about that a minute. I think I'd say the guy that probably does more and works harder at it is our defensive backs coach. He's into it. He does more with knowing what's going on and just being, asking questions and that kind of thing. So he probably, if I had to choose one guy, that would be the guy. And there's always some issues with coaches, who are not.
Sure.
One of our issues has been, maybe guys are not paying attention to their players, at certain times during practice, or, and that doesn't happen in the States, because if it does, then you're looking for another job,
Right.
So that can be an issue.
Yeah.
When you're trying to round out your team, it kind of on that recruiting end that we touched on before, but when you're looking for, some of the Americans that you were going to put on your team, how are you finding those?
Well, a lot of them, of course, have been coming to Europe for years. Like the middle linebacker we signed had been in Europe for years, and we knew about him, of course. In the ELF, you kind of tend to look at the guys that have had some ELF experience first. You can always, go back to colleges, and find guys who are, looking. In particular, they may contact. I get messages every day, of the season from somebody in the States, wanting to play. It's usually a wide receiver or, a quarterback. Those guys that seem to be always sending messages. The old linemen don't send any messages out. But you always find out. Of course, you try to do some diligence on them. Interview them if I can. I interviewed a guy in Texas last year. A running back, and tried to see what kind of guy he was. You try to do all those things, but sometimes it's kind of difficult. Like I say, with our Brazilian players, all we had to go on was some tape, and somebody telling us something, so you don't really know what you're getting until they get here. So that can be a problem, but you just do the best you can.
Right on.
What's game day look like in terms of the staff? Do you have, is there reliable communication, press box, or do you have those things, or do you just have everybody on the
Well,
field?
we have, we of course, everybody has the headphones, and the guys, how this works. Sometimes you have guys who are real helpful, and sometimes you don't.
Right.
So on the headphones, so it's kind of just depends on who you've got, as to what you're getting from them. So organization's pretty good. We've got the game day organization. Of course, the league comes in with their spotter, or whatever you want to call him, or supervisor, league guy, game supervisor, and he kind of runs the setup, the show, pregame and all that. And, you of course meet with the referees and do all that business, like you do in every other league. But yeah, it's pretty much set up the way you would be used to. Like I say, other teams that have we don't actually have a press box. It's tables up in the top of the stands. Because velodromes don't have press boxes. So,
Right.
in other stadiums, it may have a real press box. With the actual setup, but a lot of them don't. So, just again, you got to adapt to whatever it is.
Adapt and overcome. What about you mentioned the officiating? I already know that it's probably not up to par. What is the league doing in terms of trying to train officials, recruit officials? I mean, you'd think that in order to put out a quality product, that has to be kind of, right underneath your coaching and playing talent. If you're going to have a league, you have to have consistent officiating. Are they doing anything to recruit and train and retain?
Well, I know they are. They do have they do take the tape and make sure their officials are, trained off the videotape, and there's some good officiating, and there's also, like you said, in any league probably you're going to find some not so good or not as experienced. And I mean, any coach is going to get on a referee every once in a while. That's part of it. I've always said I've always hated get back referees. And if you know what I'm talking about, the guy is always telling you get back. And
right.
Instead of watching the game, he's telling you to get back. So that. But anyway, I say for the most part it's been okay. I mean they're going to miss things, obviously. The one thing in this league, and I'm sure it's true of the NFL a lot too, or college, now, holding, I mean, you practically have to rip the guy's shoulder pads off before they'll call it. So, that's a thing, but, I think another thing is these referees in this league, if they're on your sideline, they have to make sure that they don't have, rabbit ears, because what happens is they get angry and then, they can't officiate. Don't get mad. Just let it go in one ear and out the other. That goes. So
sure,
they got to learn to do that sometime.
Yeah.
So are you guys utilizing the helmet mics?
No, we don't have those. Everything's play call, signal, whatever, but wrist coach, whatever you want to call it. We don't have the helmet stuff. We do have, they do let you use the iPads. If you got somebody who can, video the play and get it down to you, which we've been able to do some. So sometimes that's helpful. But so that's one of the things they do allow.
Awesome.
How does equipment work with the players? A lot of them still have to purchase their own equipment and that sort of thing.
It's some do, and some will have their, guys like their own shoulder pads or something like that. For the most part, the teams purchase, the helmets, and shoulder pads, and of course jerseys and all that. It's pretty much, purchased by the team. But like I say, some guys probably have something they like to. Shoes are a different story.
Right.
Everybody has their own shoes. That's not usually provided, but not by anybody I know.
Right.
And practice gear, you're going to get a practice pant and a practice jersey, but not much else. I mean, you may get some team gear, depending on shorts, t-shirts, things like that. But.
Well, awesome. That actually brings us to the top of the hour. It always goes by quick. Definitely appreciate you coming on, spending the hour with us.
Well, I appreciate it too. Sorry I didn't get back to you in 2 weeks before.
No, we're good. It's a pleasure having you, Coach. Great having you. Best of luck as you round out the season, and tell the staff I said buona fortuna. Good luck.
I'll do that. Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Good talking with you, and appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And for all of you watching, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us bring our content to you. And if you're watching on Roku, stay tuned for the next hour. Other than that, we will see you guys next week.
Take care. Thanks again, Jim.